Shadows of betrayal. Sarah had always dreamed of a loving family. After her divorce, she was hesitant to open her heart again, but when she met Mark, everything changed. He was kind, funny, and shared her passion for the outdoors. Mark had a son, Ethan, a bright 16-year-old who was initially welcoming. Their family blended seamlessly at first. Picnics in the park, movie nights, and game days filled their weekends. But as Sarah settled into her new role as a stepmother, she began to notice subtle shifts. Ethan, once cheerful and respectful, became more withdrawn. Mark often worked late, leaving Sarah and Ethan alone together. At first, she enjoyed the one-on-one time, but soon the atmosphere began to change. It started with small comments. Ethan would make jokes that made Sarah uncomfortable, subtle innuendos that lingered in the air longer than they should. "You know, you look great in that dress," he'd say, smirking. She would laugh it off, trying to dismiss the unease growing inside her. As the months passed, Ethan's behavior escalated. He would find excuses to be near her, lingering in the kitchen while she prepared dinner or sitting too close on the couch during family movie nights. Sarah felt a tumult of emotions, confusion, guilt, and a forbidden thrill that made her heart race. She loved Mark deeply, yet Ethan's attention sparked something she hadn't felt in years. One night, while Mark was working late, Ethan came to her with a school assignment. "Can you help me with this math problem?" he asked, his voice low and compelling. Sarah hesitated but agreed. They sat at the kitchen table, the dim lighting casting shadows around them. As she leaned over to explain a concept, Ethan's hand brushed against hers, sending a jolt of electricity through her. "Thanks, Sarah. You always know how to make things clear," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. The intensity of his gaze made her breath hitch. She pulled back, heart racing, a mixture of fear and excitement flooding her senses. In the weeks that followed, the tension grew unbearable. Ethan began to initiate physical contact, accidental touches that felt anything but accidental. Sarah tried to maintain her distance, but it was a losing battle. One evening, they found themselves alone again, and the air crackled with unspoken tension. "Why do you always avoid me?" Ethan asked, a hint of frustration in his voice. "We could have fun together, you know." Her heart raced. "Ethan, I'm your stepmother," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "We shouldn't. It's not appropriate." "Why not?" "We get along better than most families," he countered, leaning closer. "You're not just my stepmom, you're my friend." His words struck a chord, and for a moment, Sarah felt a rush of camaraderie. It clouded her judgment, and in a moment of weakness, she leaned in, their lips brushing together in a fleeting kiss. The world around them faded, and all she could think about was the thrill of the moment. But as reality crashed back in, she recoiled in horror. "What did we just do?" she gasped, shaking her head. "This can't happen again." Ethan's expression shifted from surprise to something darker. "Why not? You liked it. I know you did." From that point on, their relationship spiraled into a dangerous game of cat and mouse. Each stolen moment felt like a ticking time bomb. Sarah was torn between her role as a mother figure and her desire to escape the mundane. The thrill of secrecy enveloped her, but the weight of guilt was suffocating. Mark remained oblivious to the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. He was focused on work, often coming home late, leaving Sarah and Ethan to fend for themselves. The house felt like a pressure cooker, the tension simmering just below the surface. One evening, during a family dinner, the tension boiled over. Ethan made another inappropriate joke, and Sarah felt her cheeks flush with anger and embarrassment. "Ethan, that's enough!" she snapped, her voice sharper than she intended. Mark looked up, confused. "What's going on?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "Nothing," Sarah replied, forcing a smile. "Just a misunderstanding." But the tension lingered, and that night, as Mark and Sarah lay in bed, she couldn't shake the feeling of dread. The secret she was keeping felt like a chasm, separating them. She had to tell him, but fear paralyzed her. What would he think? How would he react? As the weeks passed, the emotional strain became unbearable. Ethan's advances grew bolder. One night, after another awkward encounter, he cornered her in the hallway. "You can't keep pretending this isn't happening," he insisted, his voice low and urgent. "I'm not pretending." Sarah shot back, panic rising in her chest. This can't happen. You're my stepson. Ethan stepped closer, his eyes dark with intensity. But you want it. I know you do. Just admit it. In that moment, Sarah felt the walls closing in. The thrill had transformed into a weight she could no longer bear. Desperation clawed at her insides. Ethan, please. You need to understand, this is wrong. But Ethan was relentless. Is it really? Or are you just afraid of what it means? Sarah's resolve began to crumble, torn between the intoxicating pull of desire and the love she had for Mark. The guilt felt like a knife twisting in her gut, and she knew she had to make a choice. The next day, Sarah could no longer carry the burden alone. She sat down with Mark, her heart pounding. "We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. Mark looked up, concern etched on his face. "What's wrong?" Taking a deep breath, she laid bare her soul. "It's about Ethan. I've been feeling confused. He's been crossing boundaries, and I don't know how to handle it." Mark's expression shifted from concern to disbelief. "What do you mean? What boundaries?" Sarah's voice broke as she recounted the events, the flirtations, the kisses, the emotional turmoil. Each word felt like a dagger piercing their relationship. Mark sat in stunned silence, his face pale. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he finally asked, hurt and betrayal lacing his voice. "I was scared," she admitted, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't want to hurt you or ruin our family." Mark's expression hardened. "So you let it go on. You let him think it was okay." "I never meant for it to go this far," she pleaded. "I tried to stop it. I swear." Mark stood up, pacing the room like a caged animal. "What do we do now? You've broken my trust, Sarah." The days that followed were filled with tension and heartache. Mark needed space to process the betrayal. Sarah felt the weight of her actions crushing her. She reached out to Ethan, desperate to understand how they had let things spiral out of control. "Why did you do this?" she asked, her voice trembling. Ethan shrugged, feigning indifference. "I thought you liked it. You seemed into it." "Ethan, this isn't just about us. You've hurt your father," she reminded him, her heart aching for the family they had once been. He rolled his eyes. "It's not my fault you couldn't handle it. You could have just said no." The conversation left Sarah feeling hollow. What had they become? The bond she thought they shared was tainted, and the line between love and betrayal had blurred beyond recognition. Mark and Sarah decided to seek counseling. The therapist guided them through their emotions, helping them articulate the pain they felt. Mark struggled with feelings of inadequacy, questioning if he had failed as a husband and a father. Sarah grappled with guilt, knowing she had put herself in a precarious situation. "Trust is fragile," the therapist reminded them. "Rebuilding it takes time, patience, and honesty." As they navigated their sessions, Sarah began to understand the gravity of her actions. She was not just a stepmother, she was a role model, and her choices had consequences. Mark, too, began to realize that communication was paramount. They had both neglected their needs, allowing the cracks in their relationship to widen. Ethan, meanwhile, was struggling with his own demons. The thrill of their secret had turned to shame, and he found himself feeling isolated. He didn't want to be the villain in this story, but he didn't know how to fix it. As weeks turned into months, the family began to find their footing again. Mark and Sarah worked tirelessly to rebuild their relationship, attending counseling together and separately. They established boundaries and learned to communicate openly, sharing their fears and desires without judgment. Ethan, too, was forced to confront his actions. He began attending therapy, where he learned about the importance of respect and boundaries. The road to healing was not easy, but he started to grasp the impact of his behavior on his family. One night, the three of them sat down together for a family dinner. The atmosphere was tense, but there was a flicker of hope. Mark cleared his throat. "I know things have been hard," he began, looking at both Sarah and Ethan. "But I want us to move forward together." Sarah nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. "We can't change the past, but we can learn from it. I'm committed to making this work." Ethan shifted uncomfortably but spoke up. "I'm sorry for what I did. I didn't think about how it would affect you both. I just got caught up in my feelings." Mark and Sarah exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. They were on the path to healing, albeit a long one. As the months continued, Sarah and Mark found new ways to connect, rediscovering the love that had initially brought them together. They took weekend trips, explored new hobbies, and started a family tradition of game nights. Laughter began to fill their home again. Ethan, too, found solace in his own pursuits, joining a sports team and focusing on his studies. He learned to respect the boundaries of their family dynamic and grew closer to both Mark and Sarah, though it would take time to rebuild the trust that had been broken. One evening, while cooking dinner, Sarah turned to Mark. "Do you think we'll ever get back to where we were?" she asked, vulnerability seeping into her voice. Mark smiled softly. "I think we can create something even better. We faced the darkness together, and that's made us stronger." And as they stood side by side in the kitchen, the aroma of their favorite meal wafting through the air, Sarah felt a sense of hope. The road ahead would be challenging, but they were committed to walking it together. Over the next year, the family continued to grow and heal. They celebrated milestones, birthdays, graduations, and family vacations. Each moment became a testament to their resilience and commitment to one another. Ethan graduated high school, and as he walked across the stage, both Mark and Sarah beamed with pride. They had come so far, and the journey had forged a new bond between them. After the ceremony, they gathered for a small celebration. "You did it," Sarah said, hugging Ethan tightly. "We're so proud of you." As Ethan smiled, he looked at them both. "Thanks for sticking with me. I know it hasn't been easy." Mark placed a hand on his shoulder. "Family means working through the tough times together. We're here for you no matter what." Years passed, and while the scars of the past remained, they no longer defined their lives. Trust had been rebuilt, but it was a fragile thing, one that required constant nurturing. Sarah learned to appreciate the importance of boundaries, understanding that love could flourish within them. Mark and Sarah grew closer, their relationship deepening as they navigated the complexities of family life. They became advocates for open communication, ensuring that all voices were heard in their home. Ethan, now in college, found his own path and developed a strong sense of identity. He often reflected on the lessons learned during that tumultuous time, recognizing the importance of respect and boundaries in all his relationships. As Sarah sat on the porch one evening, watching the sunset, she felt a sense of peace. The past had shaped them, but it did not define them. They had faced the shadows of betrayal and emerged stronger, united by their love and commitment to one another. In the end, the journey of healing had taught them that while family dynamics could be complex and challenging, they could also be filled with profound love, resilience, and hope. And as they looked toward the future, they knew they were ready to face whatever came next together.